So what do we do when we face life's biggest, scariest, most upsetting challenges? I'm sure if you've lived a little bit on this earth, we have all faced those moments. Whether it was the loss of a significant other, maybe it was a parent in an unexpected way, unfortunately maybe a child or a close friend, maybe we faced or experienced a divorce. Whatever it was, something most likely at some point brought us to our very knees, and we really wondered, where was God? Why was this happening to me? What is the deal with all of this? After all, I'm a good person. We had our Jobian moment, as it were. Well, in case you were curious, it is a very human experience to have those moments of extreme doubt. And I have to ask, what have you done when that has happened? Because I know I've had those. I didn't expect that I would end up divorced. That wasn't what I signed up for when I got married. There are options. Some people choose to go the getting drunk, getting high, getting stoned, getting whatever, so that they don't have to deal with it route. Some people choose the I'm going to go to therapy, I'm going to do all sorts of things and change my life route. Some people stand in silence, don't know what to do, and just hope that if they stick their head in the sand, it will be as if that terrible, horrible event never even happened. In case you're curious, the idea to be drunk, that's not, or stoned, or what have you, is not a new idea. I hate to break it to you. Noah, our friend in the Bible, the book of Genesis, had it first after the whole world flooded and he didn't know what to do with all of his sorrow. First thing he does, he plants a vineyard and he gets a little bit snookered. In case you're also curious, he wasn't the one and only one who did it. After Lot witnessed the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and he turned around and watched his wife turn into a pillar of fire, oh my God, he got drunk too. And he did some crazy things, but we're not going to talk about what he did there. And then there's Aaron. In this week's portion, we read about Aaron. And what happens to Aaron? His sons go into the sanctuary, they offer alien fire, and God comes down and destroys them in such a way that he takes away their bodies and leaves their clothes unsinged in a realm or something of fire in some crazy fashion that only works in the Bible or in biblical times. But I cannot imagine what the high priest must have experienced or felt when he faced the loss of his children. How could he go on and still lead everybody in prayer, offer sacrifices to the same God that just took his very children, and do so with pure kavanah, or pure intention? When Aaron witnessed the death of his sons, he chose, well, we might think maybe he did the Noah and Lot route and choose to drink, but instead he was silent. He did the I'm going to stand in silent mode. What thoughts ran through his head? I don't know. I can only imagine the depth of the pain that he must have felt. Perhaps he did seek or express a desire to wonder about the oblivion that he could find in the bottom of a cup, which is why we read in verse 9, drink no wine or intoxicants, God tells Aaron, neither you nor your remaining sons, for that way lies death. Well, okay, not a good idea. Not route A, as done by Noah and Lot. But then what does Aaron do? He's still silent. And yet we also see within a few short verses, after his standing in silence and being told not to drink, not to stick his head in the sand, we see that there's a momentary crack in the priestly facade that Aaron gives. Moses finds out that Aaron and his sons did not eat of a sin offering that had been brought earlier that day. In fact, he goes on to reprove Aaron indirectly by hectoring his sons. And Moses says, "Why did you not eat of the sin offering in the sacred area? For it is most holy, and God has given it to you to remove the guilt of the community and to make expiation of them before the Lord." And Aaron says in response to his questioning by his own brother, as if his own brother is attempting to blame him for the loss of his own children, "See, this day they brought their sin offerings and their burnt offerings before the Lord, and such things have befallen me. Had I eaten sin offerings today, would the Lord have approved?" Who's the they Aaron is speaking with? Why, it's no other than his own children, who just a few verses earlier in the chapter, we read that it was they who walked into the sanctuary to help Aaron with the sacrifices. Well, Aaron was the one offering, and Aaron was the one eating, and Aaron was the one sprinkling the blood. Those sons, including Nadab and Abihu, who stood nearby and supported their father in performing that important sacrificial rite. And when Moses heard Aaron's response, and you can kind of, unfortunately the Torah cuts these verses up a little too much, but you can kind of figure out that Moses was silent and he didn't quite know what to say when he looked at his own brother. In a moving essay on the mourning of children in Jewish tradition, Dr. Sheila Ballet explains, quote, "To an outside observer, Aaron's silence could be evidence of a stoic tranquility and acceptance of the divine decree, but he reveals that he is in fact, in that moment, in that interaction with Moses, in deep pain and grief, in an act of resistance. That begins his mourning. He chooses to go on, to refrain from one public duty. Through exchange reveals the pathos, the grief previously obscured. Aaron's grief, of course, is complex. It's not so transparent. Like all human beings, our emotions are not easily discerned by others who interact with us. But we see that Aaron's silence and his pushing back was the beginning of his grief. And while he may have been tempted to go the route of drinking, and may have been tempted to go the route of denying God and exiting stage right, as it were, he doesn't. Ramban himself points out the fact that Aaron was silent, the fact that he even spoke up, points out that there could be other ways and things that Aaron was experiencing. He writes, "This means he cried out, but then became silent." Perhaps the meaning in the verse, and he cites Lamentations, "Give yourself no respite, your eyes no rest." First, Ramban reads deeper into the text, suggesting that Aaron at first cried out loud and fell silent. And if we are to truly embrace Ramban's initial reading, it necessitates translating the relevant part of the verses. Then Aaron became silent and chose to pray and become an inwardly focused human being to get through that moment. The alternative reading, second reading, based on the quote from Lamentations, is that the falling of silent is read in the context that maybe he was falling because his tears were falling out of his eyes silently, and he was grieving and crying. As leaders who go through experiences like that must before other people. He did it not in private. but as a very first act of deep committed faith, of mourning and maintaining a relationship to God publicly. When personal tragedy strikes, we may, like Noah and Lot, attempt and go to alcohol, pills, and other means. And yet, the pain of what we experienced and what happened carries on, whether we like it or not. It's still there, waiting. And perhaps we need to take a page out of Aaron's book, standing in silence, maybe even screaming a little bit back and pushing against what happened to to Moses, his brother, and even to God. But he maintains that relationship in the end with God. He maintains that relationship with Moses. And he continues to become, while broken, a still whole person, going on and leading the people through sacrifice and worship to find a deeper relationship with God. Shabbat Shalom.